You are in tune with the nation's stations, ABS TV Channel 10, the GIS, and ABS Radio 90.5 FM. Proudly serving you, reaching more and more people every day. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us for another edition of House Calls. It's a Tuesday evening program dedicated to bringing medical advice to you, ensuring that you are kept up to date with all the information that could possibly make the difference between life and death, or certainly could make the difference between a healthy life, being well, and not being healthy or well. So this evening we're talking about oral health. So we've talked about so many different aspects of health and healthcare delivery. We've talked about the circulatory system, we've talked about hypertension, diabetes, we've talked about pediatrics, obstetrics, gynecology. This evening we're talking about oral health. It's the beginning of the digestive system, right? You have to be able to masticate your food so that it is prepared for your digestive system, so that salivary amylase and all these other enzymes can get to work on your food in your stomach. So we begin with this issue now of teeth and gum disease. Generally, dental development from the cradle to the grave. Let's talk about that this evening. And who better to talk about it than Dr. Sengupta. Dr. Sengupta is a dental surgeon specializing in implants and cosmetic dentistry. So he'll be talking with us about all these issues this evening. And of course, a bit later on, you'll be having your opportunity to weigh in on the discussion as well with your questions, comments on both telephone and on Facebook. It is House Calls, the most powerful and epic program anywhere in the Caribbean on issues of healthcare. Good evening to you, Dr. Sengupta. Really appreciate you joining us.
Good evening. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be back.
And you said back because absolutely right. This is pretty much full circle for House Calls because our viewers who would have been following this show from inception would remember that our very first doctor in the house was Dr. Sengupta. So welcome back.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Just a little bit about Dr. Sengupta. For those viewers who would not have had an opportunity to look at that show, see that first show, and might not have had an opportunity to be at your office, just a little bit about Dr. Sengupta so that we can introduce you to the audience in the house.
Well, I came to Antigua in 1993. I joined Sir James Carlisle, our previous Governor General, and it took about 14 months before I decided I'd like to stay. And so we worked something out, and the rest is history. I've spent most of the time, well, I started out in High Street, upstairs Scent Shop, and then we got blown away in 1995 by Hurricane Lewis, and then we set up at the Woods Dental Clinic, where I've been for over a decade, about 15 years actually, and now we've been at a new location on Airport Road,
which we'll talk about a bit later on, and which will actually show some of our viewers that a bit later on. So, so now you've been introduced duly to the doctor in the house, Dr. Sengupta. So, Dr. Sengupta, dental development, we'll be talking about this from the cradle to the grave, so right throughout. Let's start off by talking about human dental development. So some species, like for example sharks, have rows and rows of teeth that they can actually develop. When they lose one, they just have rows and rows of teeth that come. Humans, though, don't have that luxury. No. So let's talk about that.
No. Well, dental development really is starting in the womb. And so much so that you can actually begin caring for your child's dental health during pregnancy. And it's quite common in Europe, other than taking the usual vitamins, etc., that we actually can supplement those vitamins with fluoride. And pregnant moms can take that, and because the teeth and the teeth begin to form and the enamel around the teeth begins to form, and if they're supplemented with this very specific mineral called fluoride, it actually strengthens the enamel around the teeth before the child is even born. So it's very, very significant in that regard, and it's considered fairly standard protocol in Europe. People have mixed feelings about that around the world for no good reason, but we know how that goes with vaccines and supplements, etc.
There you go. Absolutely. All right. So it starts in the womb, and then the first signs of teeth developing, for example, for a baby.
Well, apart from at birth, typically babies are born without teeth. There's going to be two sets of teeth. There's going to be the primary dentition, or what we call the deciduous teeth. And the first couple of teeth begin to grow in at approximately 6 months. And it's always the lowers always come first before the uppers. And from 6 months, the first teeth begin to come through. Rarely, babies are born with what's called a neonatal tooth, and that means that it can make breastfeeding a little tricky for mom. But it does occasionally happen, and then from 6 months up until the age of 3 is when all 20 baby teeth begin to come in. And so now it's a very important time because whilst these teeth are developing, the face is also growing. And the child is also growing in terms of being able to breathe and being able to eat. And the entire breathing and eating apparatus changes. And when a baby is born, the action of sucking food forms the shape of the jaws around the tongue, and it changes the shape of the face. And so there are what we call extrinsic factors involved in causing the face to develop around the way that you eat. And so now it begs the question then, and subsequently the way that you breathe, because not only is your mouth just of teeth, it's how you feed yourself, how you stay alive, and it is also how you breathe. Now, air pressure passing through your oral and nasal system is going to influence the way that your face grows, and the way that you eat, and the way that you suck first on a nipple and then and swallow. If there's some new moms out there with their little children, you will see that when your 1-year-old or younger is swallowing, they always put their tongue out. And that's how babies swallow. Now that tongue coming forward eventually is replaced by the tongue staying back and your jaws coming together. Now, so if you stay breastfeeding for a long time, or if you replace a dummy with a finger, then that tongue thrust coming forward can change the shape of your face, and completely change the shape of your face, actually. It's a very powerful muscle, the tongue, and it changes the position of your teeth. And so development is, to a certain extent, intrinsic. If mom and dad are big, or one is big and one is small, obviously there's going to be a genetic factor. But growth is also as much influenced by environmental factors than it is by genetic factors.
Nature versus nurture debate.
Absolutely, and that can vary tremendously. If you had a twin brother and you're separated and you're in completely different environments, completely different behaviors, and it's your identical twin, it's yes, of course you will fundamentally look alike, but you could have completely different features. That theory is well understood and well recognized in actually all of medicine and dentistry. And so when we recognize that the way that you live your lives, the way that you breathe, the way that you eat, and your normal relaxed tongue position literally influences the shape of your jaws and of your face and of the way you breathe and eat, it's quite a thought with regard to your physical abilities. I mean, after all, it's quite useful if you can have a clear passage to breathe in properly, to be able to inhale. And likewise, if you have teeth that are in the correct position for proper function. Because during that period of development, you literally are in creating, or what is happening is that you're developing a dentition that is really the ultimate set of tools you could ever have. Because your teeth can literally function as a perfect tool throughout your entire life of 70 to 80 years without ever going blunt. There's no such thing as a tool in the tool chest that can do that. But teeth can, if their positioning is correct, and if the environment and the diet and the nutrition is correct. It's the only tool ever that will never go blunt if the positioning is correct.
We're going to talk about that. That's an extraordinary thought. That's extraordinary the way how you put that.
Indeed. Indeed.
So of course, the prevention issues will come in, the issues of ensuring that you prevent challenges with your teeth, such as, for example, cavities and so on. And also making sure that they look better. So we're going to be talking about the cosmetic element of what Dr. Sengupta does a bit later on. So we're still on the issue of children, though. So deciduous teeth.
Yes,
much like deciduous trees, which
exactly,
the leaves fall off.
Exactly.
Deciduous teeth, which
we
go.
enjoy, so kids from 6 months up until 3 years. At 3 years old, your child is going to have 20 teeth, 10 up top, 10 in the bottom, and then they keep those 20 teeth, and hopefully in good health. And it's very important that you help your child take care of those teeth, primarily with ensuring that you're minimizing your sugar intake, that you're encouraging good habits for brushing teeth, etc., which we will talk about, I'm sure. And those teeth will remain as they are until approximately age 6. And then at age 6, the first back teeth, the first big molars, these guys begin to come in. And so these guys form in the back of the jaws here. There's going to be 4 of them, always the lowers before the uppers. And so the lower guys begin to come in, and that's the first permanent teeth, along with the baby teeth on the lower front, that then drop out, and they're replaced by the sort of screwdriver or spade-shaped permanent teeth. So 6 years old is a very big deal, because that's the start of what we call the mixed dentition. And so now you've got the permanent teeth beginning to come through. Now here's a thought that I so often speak to parents about, is that at age 6, the child in the chair has the same teeth in the front and towards the back, age 6 and 7, has the same teeth in the front and the back that I have in my mouth, and I'm a lot more than 6. And so if these teeth are compromised or not taken care of, that's it.
No more replacements.
Yes, because the teeth is one of the few things in the body that doesn't heal. When they're damaged, they do not heal. That's it. They're damaged. And so therefore, dentistry really is focused about trying to repair those teeth, which will never grow back themselves. They don't shrink. There's no regeneration of it. If I cut your hand, okay, you won't grow your hand back, but if you get a cut, your cut will heal. There will be repair. There will be healing. Teeth, no, won't happen.
And that's where Dr. Sengupta comes in. And by the way, some individuals are afraid of going to the dentist. They will always be afraid of going to the dentist. I'm sure you hear that too. But we're going to come to that issue about the fear of the dentist and so on. But the message that you will send to this evening is that if you do the right things, you don't have to be afraid of the dentist, because you're going to the dentist for preventative dentistry more than anything else.
Absolutely. I mean, the concept of dental decay is really a relatively recent concept, because dental decay, which is the other side of this model now, is that this is when decay begins to come into the tooth and causes damage. Now, the only cause of this is simplified carbohydrates being sugars, and specifically being sugars. So now that means if we look at old skulls from even hundreds of years ago, there is hardly any evidence of dental decay whatsoever. Because even, and going back in human history, even before the agricultural revolution, where are you getting sugars and sweets for if you're wandering the earth as hunter-gatherer societies were doing some 18,000 years ago? The human history is much longer than that. And now, so dental decay is only something that has really begun when we stopped wandering, and when we started forming civilizations and cultivating crops and then producing sugars and fermenting things. And that's when sugar began to come into play. Of course, in the Victorian era, when they discovered sugar, when they discovered honey, etc., you'd put it on meat, you'd put it on everything. It was used as a preservative, and of course, that's when dental decay started. Prior to that, the only other thing that actually ever happened to teeth was gum disease. And so there's only 2 things. I wouldn't exist were it not for damaged teeth or damaged gums. Now, how do gums get damaged? That's got a lot less to do with sugar. You have a plaque, you have bacteria accumulating around the edges of your teeth every single day. If that is not removed, the gums get inflamed, you begin to get gingivitis. That gingivitis then creeps down and it affects the bone of the teeth here. And now it's rather like If you have an orchard and you have a river running through the orchard, the river has burst its banks and the soil is now being eroded. So these perfectly good trees, they're laden with fruit, they're perfectly good, they're perfectly functional. When the soil is gone, the trees begin to get loose. So that shaky tooth that you can begin to feel at the back, typically from my age onwards, is when periodontal disease begins to manifest itself. But all of that is preventable, Garfield, that's what I'm saying. Sugar, eat less of it. As far as gum disease is concerned, brush your teeth. It's not that hard. It really isn't. And you can literally keep those perfect tools forever. Literally.
Without getting dull.
They do not get dull. They cannot. Once they are in unison, once they are lined up and set up into the harmony that they were supposed to be originally designed, created, however you feel about it, once that works, the teeth cannot get dull. It's a remarkable concept, and they're used every single day of your life.
Extraordinary. We're going to go to our first break shortly. Before we do that, our control room will ensure that we are able to have, because Dr. Sengupta has been so gracious as to provide us with some slides, some pictures that we can actually see what he's talking about. In addition to the props there with these models of, molars and it's all molars really. Yes. I have some incisors there, somewhere there. But
a couple of my patients lent me their teeth. Yeah.
Here's something else. So let's go to our first picture, picture one, Damien, which will just want you to talk us through these two.
Yeah. So on the left, you're basically looking at it's a plastic skull model of a child that will be now 6 years old. So you've got all of the baby teeth there, but you see the blue buds there. That is the developing permanent dentition as it's beginning to push through. And there's a very specific sequence all of that comes in. And in order for those teeth to come in, the jaws have to grow. How do the jaws grow? The jaws grow, A, partially because of genetics, and B, because of the way you eat, because of the way you eat, the way you swallow, and the way you breathe. So if you don't swallow or eat properly or breathe properly through your nose, your development of the jaws will change in shape. If the jaws change in shape or they're not encouraged to grow by forces of the musculature acting on them, even the air coming through your nose, and you become a mouth breather, for example, you may very well see kids that constantly sit in class like this, with the mouth open constantly. It's a mouth breather. We're not supposed to be breathing through our mouth all the time. It's supposed to be eating through the mouth and breathing through the nose. Anyone into any form of sports and athletics will tell you this for sure. Now, that air pressure rushing through your face will cause a stimulation of your bones to develop your face. As the face develops, the jaws grow. And then all of those teeth that you see there on the left of the screen in number one, all those blue things will actually get space to move down and form the jaws properly. And then ultimately on the right side, that's the full adult dentition when all of the baby teeth are out. And that's typically around 12 years old when you have all of your permanent teeth. And that's it. That's the perfect tool chest right there. You take care of those, you have all of that for the rest of your life in perfectly good condition. And it's very simple. Brush those teeth and avoid the sugar. That's literally it. And we will never, ever have dental issues.
Extraordinary. So that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's like just the top of the teeth without actually going into the gum. So get your teeth into house calls the rest of the program. Pardon the pun, I just had to say it. When we come back, much more from Dr. Sumi Sengupta, as I said, dental surgeon specialist in, as I said, cosmetic dentistry. He'll be talking with us about preventative dentistry, making sure that you don't need to be afraid of going to Dr. Sengupta or any other dentist. By the way, he is, and I say this unreservedly, he's the best not only in this country but across the region as well. When we come back, much more, we're going to be talking about what you can do to ensure that you don't have to worry. When we come back, much more on House Calls. Stick around.
Life moves fast. Be prepared with Sagicor. Learn more at sagicor.com.
This week on Conversations, we speak to
Sir David Showell, owner of Showell's Toys, Gifts and Housewares. But that was where those things started, because everything happened there. I'll tell you something that probably wouldn't happen to them. Forgive me for saying this, I hope.
Conversations, a short yet stimulating, revealing look at the life of prominent Antiguans and Barbudans. Join me, Natalie Clark-White, for Antigua and Barbuda's prominent people stories, and be inspired.
Join us on Antigua Barbuda today as we take an annual Easter Monday walk with St. Stephen's Anglican Church. Then we head over to Otter's Comprehensive School, as well as have consumer questions with Mrs. Joanne Peters. Antigua Barbuda today. It's all here.
Seeing is experiential. Seeing is everyday life. Seeing is style, class, and sheer sophistication. At iMobile Vision Care, we offer state-of-the-art lab technology and the widest variety of quality eyewear from the biggest brands to suit your lifestyle. Stop by our offices at Dr. Rosalie Drive, Lower Gambles to get a comprehensive digital eye exam, or call us at 562-7823 and ask about our optical care services. iMobile Vision Care. See and be seen.
Thank you so much for joining us here on House Calls. If you've been with us since the start of the program, welcome back. If you're just joining us, a warm welcome, whatever the platform you're using to join us here. The program is called House Calls. It's sponsored by Sagicor with the kind compliments as well of our other partners, Pink Mongoose, as well as AG Morgan. They're making sure that this program comes to you every Tuesday evening at 8 o'clock, bringing invaluable medical advice to you in so many different areas. This evening, we're talking about oral health, so teeth and gum health. All right, so making sure that your teeth are in perfect condition, and not only in perfect condition, but also you can burnish them, you can make them more beautiful. We're going to get to that a bit later on. Dr. Sumi Sengupta is the doctor in the house this evening, so you don't have to be afraid of the dentist. You follow his advice. All right, Dr. Sengupta, the issues now of preventative dentistry.
Yes.
So brushing routine, diet, fluoride treatment, checking your dentist regularly. All of those issues come up now. What would be your best advice to individuals? You touched on it before we went to the break about sugars, which are absolutely deleterious to teeth if you do not take care of your teeth after you're eating sugars, and the importance of brushing to ensure that you prevent gum disease. So what is the other advice that you want to give?
That's right. So if our concerns about teeth are fundamentally going to be evolving around the bacteria around the gums that damage the teeth and cause gum disease, and the sugar in your diet, which will then begin to dissolve the enamel and starts this alive, carious process which damages the teeth. And the other issue that can happen is that if our development and different behaviors we have through life, whether we're sucking thumbs, whether we're staying on a pacifier for an extended period of time, can actually cause an elongation of the position of the teeth. For example, if you're sucking a finger like this, it doesn't take much imagination to appreciate that your thumb can push your teeth out forward, and it can literally move as much as a millimeter in a month. And so if this is what the primary issues are, then the prevention surely is to just A, protect the teeth from damage, B, protect the gums from damage, and C, ensure that habits and positioning, that habits are not involved in part of the day-to-day activity of deleterious habits of finger sucking or pacifier sucking is not taking place. Okay. So that's what prevention is based on, and then protecting the teeth and gums. And one of the best ways of doing that is that at the end of the day, it's very hard to avoid sugar. If you go to your cupboard right now and just pull out 3 things, I guarantee you 2 of those 3 things is going to have sugar in some form or another. And the other word for sugar in the food literature, if you will, is high fructose corn syrup. And that stuff is nasty, lethal, cheap, and garbage. And it is extremely harmful to your health, and we all eat it in copious amounts with all the drinks that we have, and the sugars and the ketchup. I mean, ketchup is almost like a sweet. You know, I love ketchup. And it is like, it's like eating cookies. It's like eating chocolate. There's so much sugar in it, as in so many of the sauces that we have. The worst thing possible is sodas. fizzy drinks. The fizz in the drinks is introduced by applying carbon dioxide to the water. Carbon dioxide in water creates this thing called carbonic acid, which is an acid which dissolves the teeth. You don't need sugar, you've got the acid. You just put the chemicals straight on your teeth and you can dissolve them all away. And I'm not kidding, you can literally dissolve them all away. And it's very, very common that I see young people, teenagers, tweenagers, that sort of age, you begin to have these little white, what we call white spot lesions, these little flecks of white areas across the necks of the teeth, but just below, just by the gum level, like little half moon crescent shapes around this area. That's a classic indication that there's a very high sugar intake in the form of liquid that's coming into that mouth.
Sodas.
Sugar liquid, yeah. And now, please don't be, don't think that making fruit juices home is a healthy alternative, because how are you making fruit juice? You have a perfectly good fruit, and then you add half a kilo of sugar to it, and you are basically making a sugar solution. There is just literally nothing worse than that for your teeth and your health generally. There's not a doctor that you've had on this show in the last year that could ever disagree with that. So we got to bring that down. We have to bring that sugar down. And then the very simple act of developing the habit from a young age of having your child brushing their teeth. Now, kids need help to brush their teeth up to and including approximately 7 years old. And they have to be supervised, they have to be watched. And the thing about it is that it's a fairly well-researched fact that when you want to make something a habit, if you say, okay, I'm going to go to the gym every morning, I'm going to go for a walk every day, it's typically recognized that if you're able to sustain something for a period of 28 days, 1 month, it's now become a habit. And you will feel awkward if you don't do it. And that's the definition of something becoming a habit. So if you can ensure that your kids are brushing every morning and every night constantly, then you develop these habits and it becomes part of who they are. No matter how late I go to bed, I'm extremely uncomfortable if I'm not brushing my teeth last thing at night. If you're thinking, okay, that's weird, well, you don't have the habit, and it's a habit you can easily develop, and certainly first thing in the morning. We've all heard about the horrors of morning breath. Well, it's a real thing, and it's not just you. There's stagnation in your mouth. Your mouth is like a washing machine during the day. You're swallowing saliva. You're swallowing about 3.5 liters of saliva every day.
Are you talking?
Well, while you're talking, while you're eating, that's normal. 3.5 liters of saliva every day is being regurgitated, is like a washing machine in your mouth. At night, that slows right down to about 1/10 of that quantity. And now, and so at night, then you don't have that circulation, and so it's at night that the bacteria build up en masse, because you don't have the activity and the circulation of saliva and the immunoglobulins and the antioxidants and the proteins in the saliva that basically will kill and catch a bacteria. And if you are a snorer or you sleep with your mouth open, you also compound the issue by having dry air onto your mouth. If you're waking up in the middle, that's something else that's a very big deal I hope we touch on as well. And this again happens to sort of my age, and I'm only 35, by the way. So almost.
Never mind that.
So sort of in your late 40s and in your 50s, where we begin to have issues where sleep apnea is a huge big deal in dentistry, and sleep apnea is I would say that as much as 30 to 40% of the adults, particularly men, but almost as many women, have this condition of sleep apnea, where the way that they're sleeping, and they're sleeping with their mouth open, and they're snoring, and the tongue is falling back towards the back of the mouth. This can cause tremendous problems. I believe you've had a couple of doctors that have mentioned that before. Dr. Bird, she's brilliant, by the way, was talking about the reduction in oxygen that was going to the arterial supply to your retina, which can exacerbate glaucoma. Well, it reduces the oxygenation of the blood supply. This is your lifeline. You eat and you breathe through your mouth. When you close this up, everything stops. And so it's through here you oxygenate your blood into your blood before it can get to your heart. And so it's literally is your lifeline. And so if at night you're blocking that airway, your brain is forcing you to breathe, it's forcing you to thrust your jaw forward and drag it, and as your jaw comes forward, it pulls the tongue with it, and then you go. And there'll be many people who are listening to this, I guarantee, who'll be very aware of their partners not just snoring, but then they stop silent at night. And so they're like, right? And I can feel many of your
people
audience
saying, yes, that's true.
Absolutely, yes. And you're not alone, and your partner needs to have this seen to, because that breathing stopping, that does not allow you to get into a deeper sleep. It doesn't allow oxygenation of your blood. It doesn't allow, it affects your entire system. That, of course, is exacerbated by your brain forcing you to breathe, thrusting your jaw forward, making your lower teeth grind up against the top teeth, and damaging teeth in the process as well. And again, at least 60% of your viewers today, if you look in the mirror or look on your phone, flip the camera around, look at your lower front teeth, you're going to see wear and tear like a chisel edge. The tools are damaged. Those tools are never supposed to get damaged. And one of the reasons will be because of this jaw thrusting forward due to sleep apnea. The connection of every part of your body, where it is all one body, and one part affects everything.
Like cogs in a machine.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Doc, let's go on to, we're still on prevention, and we're still on taking care of your teeth and so on. Slide 3, picture 3, you have a picture there of topical fluoride varnish. Let's talk about that, Doc.
Right. Topical fluoride varnish is basically a form, is a way that you can paint, so both your slide 3 and your slide 4. On the left side, we've got this sort of gooey varnish that obviously has no sugar in it, but it has this particular mineral called fluoride that will impregnate. Think of it like varnishing the wood on the patio furniture, or painting a plank of wood in your garden, your fence, to protect it from the elements. It basically has this chemical that becomes part of the tooth and strengthens the tooth and makes it more resistant to acid and sugar damage throughout life. And we start doing this early, young. It's not going to hurt your kids. It's not going to harm your kids. It is absolutely proven conclusively that the addition of supplemental fluoride like this is the #1 thing that you can possibly do to prevent dental decay. If you go on to the next slide, number 5, you will see that there is another extremely common form. And what we do here is the tooth on the left, where it says before, this is a regular tooth. As it erupts, remember I was telling you at 6 years old, these big guys come in at the back. Well, as soon as your kids get these big guys come in there, we put a coat. We now do a special procedure where we literally paint this coat and we solidify it like the white tracks you see. It looks like a marbled track on the surface of the tooth. And that literally is putting like gel coat on a boat, putting lacquer onto furniture. And that is one of the most important things that you can possibly do to teeth. And it can be there for years and years and years, and it will stop the acid dissolution of the teeth. Doesn't mean it's licensed to go and eat sweets. That upper surface of the tooth that you see, where you see the white veins and tracks on the surface, that's the fissure sealant. And that's one of the most susceptible parts of the tooth to getting decay. But it's not just that. In between the teeth is another spot. But here we cut the incidence of dental decay by 50 to 75%.
Wow.
By using just this simple procedure, which every dentist in this country and all the countries can do. It is very simple, it is very painless, it is not expensive, it is very straightforward. Every dentist can do this for you. And to my mind, all your kids should have all of their teeth fissure sealed. Fissure sealed is what the term is.
Because these crevices,
Correct.
these fissures, are almost like natural, they're natural structures which allow for, which make it easier for example, for the decators to start?
It's like the grout lines between the tiles in the bathroom.
Yes.
You got to clean them out, and you got to protect them. You got to do whichever. So consider them like the grout lines in between tiles. That's where the weakness is. That's where the weak part is, where the sugar and the acid can get in, and that is where you begin to get the cavities. And the vast majority of cavities form right there.
Good segue into now perhaps not restorative dentistry, but I like to call it remedial dentistry almost, right?
Okay.
Because you're not able to restore the teeth, as you said, because once teeth are damaged, they're damaged.
Well, we can. I can restore
some sort
them,
of restoring, yes.
but I can never give you something as good as your teeth originally were.
Right.
Your teeth won't repair themselves, right? We have to work. The dentist has to do this for you. And so once a tooth has been damaged and you begin to get, now you see, this is what I was talking about, where if we have the fissure sealant over the top here, we wouldn't have this cavity forming in the first place. That doesn't mean to say you can't get a cavity forming on the other side of the tooth, but this is where the vast majority of the time you get this cavity forming. And all that means is that, you know how you can get nice hard wood like this? And if it goes rotten and wood gets rotten and it gets woodworm, it's soft, and you could just take something and scrape it. That's exactly what dental decay is like. And so the tooth started out nice and hard like this, and now you can just scrape it off like hard cheese, and it's damaged. Now, it gets to a point where it begins to progress towards the pulp, which is the next thing we're going to talk about. But if we catch it, ideally by sealing it in the first place, the fissure sealant that every dentist can do, and then if we catch it in the next phase, then we're having to look at the possibility of these options right here in this slide, where we've got on the left, we're doing a white filling. The second one along is the silver fillings. Most people, certainly above, I would say, the age of 20, 30, will be having or have had these silver fillings in the past. There's nothing wrong with that, with those silver fillings. They've been used for literally more than 100 years, and they are fine. I'm not going to tell you you must change them. It's just that they are finite, and today we can do restorations that look nice and are just as strong and just as good as any silver, and indeed better than any silver fillings have ever been. The ones on the left is a resin where you get the fillings to actually bond to the teeth, and so they don't fall apart, and it holds the tooth together. The next one is a porcelain, where we make a filling outside of the mouth and we insert that into the tooth. And then, of course, on the extreme right, this is a little bit more old school, but it's still considered one of the best restorations to do gold fillings.
Gold,
yeah. It still is. It still is. A lot of dentists would actually say that they would elect, if they required dental work, they would elect to do gold fillings or gold caps where they can.
Extraordinary. but if you could go back to the slide, the composite one, is that becoming more?
That's universal.
That's universal.
In fact, as far as fillings are concerned, again, every dentist in this country, we've got really good dentists in this country. We've got quite a lot of them now. I think we've got about 27, 28. And everybody is doing composite resin fillings. The thing about them is they're more technique sensitive. They're harder to do. You need to have something that's very dry. If you're painting a piece of wood, you don't paint wet wood. You can't do it when it's raining. Well, guess what? The mouth, it's kind of raining all the time, right? So it is what we call technique sensitive, and so it has to be done properly. And there are various techniques we use to keep it dry, in terms of the actual process of it. But yes, the white fillings, that's a universal filling material that we all use.
All right. Doc, let's start now. Let's go on to the next stage. So fillings may not work depending on the stage of damage and decay to the teeth.
That's right.
So we need to get to now root canal.
That's right.
Talk to me about that, please.
So if we catch it in time, we can repair the tooth. We can't make the tooth heal, but we can repair the tooth for you. And then what will happen, so that's one thing. But if we don't catch it in time, or once it has been repaired, you continue with your habits and you continue with the high sugar intake, or because the larger the filling is, the weaker the tooth is. Right? That stands to reason. The tooth used to be one homogeneous structure. Now it's like a tire. You keep patching it when it gets punctures. Well, the whole thing becomes a weaker structure. There's nothing quite like a complete homogeneous structure like the tooth was. Now, the bigger the fillings, then they can also get decay around them if the environment in the mouth is still highly acidic or still very sweet, and then the process continues. We call this the cycle. And so, and which is why we never want that cycle to begin. Because if you put those vicious sealants on there, if you brush your teeth, if you ensure that the diet is good, this perfect tooth is never breached. And remember, at age 6, those same teeth that are coming from the age between the ages of 6 to 12, they're supposed to be there forever. That's it. The first filling you get into a permanent tooth, you have that filling for life. It never goes away. Now, we can do good stuff today, but if I'm doing fillings on somebody who's 10, 12, 14, 20 years old, will it be there when they're 80? I don't think so.
Exactly.
That doesn't make sense.
So in other words,
under load, in a wet environment, in an acidic environment, constantly under pressure, there's no way.
So the longer you can preserve your teeth in the natural condition
Absolutely.
without having to do any sort of
Absolutely.
restoration,
Yes.
the much better.
Yes.
All right, Doc, before we go to our next break, our next slide will then have caps and bridges.
Right.
Because that has become another opportunity, another way to restore, to give you some sort of restoration. And we qualify restoration because, again, you can't get back what you lost with
Yes.
teeth. But you
Restoration, not regeneration.
Precisely.
Right.
There you go. So let's talk about these now, Doc.
Okay, so basically there comes a point when you have so many fillings, or the fillings are so large, such that the only way to preserve a tooth is to put a cap on it. And the purpose of a cap is basically what you're seeing here in that in slide number 8 there. On the left-hand side is we effectively make a custom helmet around the tooth. Because if you have a filling, a large filling around a tooth, and you apply pressure, the one place where the break is going to occur is the junction of the filling and the tooth. That's the junction of two dissimilar materials is always the weakest point. Every contractor knows this, every woodworker knows this, any handyman knows this. And so the junction is the weakest thing. So what we try to do is we try to get a precise fitting, custom-made helmet. And that's what is called a cap or a crown. And the purpose of that is to ensure that the tooth with the large fillings does not break. That is the #1 reason for putting a cap or a crown, is to prevent future breakage and to restore the full form of the tooth in its original strength. But it's never, and nothing any dentist will ever do is going to be better than your original healthy tooth. So don't put us on that pedestal, right?
Yes,
That's
yes.
just, that can never happen. And so these crowns, of course, and so these crowns are made such that we literally can make, so we do the preparation of the tooth, we go through an impression process, and then we can have this made that fits over the top of it. Now you can bite and chew on this as much as you like, and you will not cause a breakage of the tooth as such. The other thing that we sometimes do with it is that if we have a missing tooth, we can, so if I'm a tooth and the guy next to me is missing, there we go, on the right-hand side. So if there's a missing tooth right there, we go to the left, we go to the right of the space, and we prepare those teeth, and we put a crown on each, and we make the crowns, and we join them all up into 3 teeth there, and then we put that into place, and now we have a bridge, and we replace the missing tooth. Now the only problem with that is if you look at those teeth on either side, is that those teeth have been quite substantially cut down. So it's quite an aggressive approach. And the thing is, it's an easily justifiable approach if those teeth are damaged anyway. But if you've lost one tooth and otherwise the surrounding teeth are great, well, we need a better solution.
Because you'll have to significantly cut down on the peel
Well,
down?
the bridge has its place. If the teeth on either side are damaged, and then it certainly has its place.
But if they're not
ultimately,
damaged?
if they're not damaged, we want to avoid that. Either you would think, and now we get into tooth replacement, which I think will probably be our next phase.
Right.
And so the tooth replacement methods will be either with a removable partial denture, which is a bit of plastic you take in and out. Some people have very mixed feelings about that, but that can be made in very many different ways. And then, of course, ultimately, you can get onto a dental implant where you can have a post that's inserted into the bone of the jaw to create this dental implant. And that now is considered to be the ultimate restoration for all missing teeth that's possible. It fundamentally happens in three stages, and what you're looking there on the left of the picture, you've got the implant. Think of it like a house. The first stage is the foundation, the second stage is the walls, and the final third stage is the roof. And that is the cap that goes on over the top. And notice also we haven't used the teeth on either side. We don't touch the teeth on either side. It is the ultimate way of restoring the tooth. But the problem here is that we need to surgically insert that implant into the bone of the jaw. We need to have the bone. We need to do our soil test. We need to take x-rays. We need to check. We need to see the volume of bone, and we need to ensure that we can put a foundation large enough and it can be accommodated within the thin jawbone in order to receive that implant such that we can build on it.
I like your analogies.
Yeah, because without that, there is no foundation.
It has to be sturdy.
100%. And the further back in the mouth, that's where the bigger. For any given bite, if you just bite your teeth together, hard as you can, hard as you like, let's call the force in the front of your mouth force of magnitude of size 1. For the same bite, the back tooth has a bite of times 7. So if we're putting implants towards the back, or if we're putting bridge work towards the back, or if we're putting fillings towards the back, any kind of mechanical restoration on back teeth is completely different from engineering principles and reconstructing principles in order to manufacture it such that it can withstand forces that are literally 7 times greater than its buddy 2-3 teeth down the road, right? And so the same applies to implants. We need more bone to have implants in the back teeth.
Otherwise, they're not going to last.
Well, there's no foundation. If there's no foundation, I mean, you can't build a house on sand.
Good analogy. I like Dr. Sengupta's analogy, don't you? Absolutely fantastic. When we come back from this break, we continue to look at what are the procedures that are available. Plus, we're going to be talking about later not only fixing, not only repairing, not only restoring, but also making them even more beautiful. So aesthetically pleasing. So you get a picture-perfect smile. I'm going to come back to those issues a bit later on, talking about, you've heard the term skin bleaching? Well, there is teeth bleaching too, you know? We're going to talk about that when we come back on House Calls. The program is called House Calls, sponsored by Sagicor, with the kind compliments of Pink Mongoose, who've, again, gone out of their way to make sure that we look absolutely resplendent this evening. Of course, their floral arrangement is extraordinary. Fascinating. Pink Mongoose, we thank our partners there. We also thank A.G. Morgan for making sure that we can be as close as possible to the flowers in terms of our being sartorially elegant. When we come back, much more on House Calls. Stick around.
I had a really good time tonight.
So did I.
Life moves fast. Be prepared with Sagicor. Learn more at sagicor.com.
This week on Conversations, we speak to
Sir David Showell, owner of Showell's Toys, Gifts and Housewares.
But that was where those things started, because everything happened there. I'll tell you something that probably wouldn't happen to them. Forgive me for saying this, I hope.
Conversations, a short yet stimulating, revealing look at the life of prominent Antiguans and Barbudans. Join me, Natalie Clark White, for Antigua and Barbuda's prominent people stories, and be inspired.
Let's get social. We're ready to connect with you. Find us on Facebook. Do you tweet? We do. Send us a tweet. Connect with us on Instagram. Keep up to date with news and more at www.abstvradio.com.
You're in tune with House Calls. It's a Tuesday evening program here on all ABS platforms dedicated to bringing you the very best medical advice. Our doctor in the house this evening, Dr. Sengupta, a dental surgeon of immense renown. All right, Dr. Sengupta, gum disease. So we talked a lot about teeth.
Yes.
The gum.
Right.
just as crucial.
Oh,
Because if the gums are, there's a problem with them, then the teeth don't function.
Indeed, and it's not only the teeth that are affected as a result of gum disease. So the gum disease, it's literally, the gums around the teeth is literally the last barrier around the necks of the teeth. If you're the tooth and you've got a tight collar around your neck, you really need that top button done up nice and tight, and you want that shirt to be real snug. Because when you begin to get underneath here, around the neck of the tooth, this being the upper part of the tooth, when you begin to get around underneath there, you're now entering the body proper. You now have access to the bloodstream. What has access to the bloodstream? Remember we talked about the plaque that we want to remove from around the neck here? And we want to be brushing around here every single day, because every 6 hours you get a discernible amount of plaque building up around that. If you don't, what's going to happen to that plaque? That plaque loves moisture. It loves to be harbored with a bunch of proteins that exist in your mouth. It also feeds on some foodstuffs that you've been eating that you haven't cleaned away. And so it can go in two ways. It can stick around in the gums, and then it can either be swallowed, or it can, or it will leave your mouth in one form or another, or it can begin to go down. And when it goes down, it begins to form the acid. And what you're seeing here in slide number 9 is that we use a special blunt instrument. We're not spiking you here with this sharp nail or anything. This is a very, very blunt instrument, as blunt as a tip of a ballpoint pen. And what we're doing is we're measuring how deep we're able to get in under the collar of your shirt, of the gums around your head. And if we're able to get down quite far before we feel resistance, we give that a numerical value. That numerical value will put us into a stage of gum disease. That's what we call periodontal bone loss. And that is where the soil erosion happens around the trees, and results in the whole nutritional supply for the tooth being lost. And that is not good on two levels. Number one, for the foundation of the tooth. And now number two, for probably one of the most compelling and important reasons, is that the presence of this bacteria around your teeth is very much directly and unequivocally and undisputedly associated with heart disease and with Alzheimer's and with sugar levels. If you are out of control diabetic, and I check your level of inflammation that's in your body, or if I check your sugar levels, for example, and if you have gum disease, if we clean up your gums, your sugar numbers reduce if we clean up your gums. If you are worsening with your diabetes, if you're remaining uncontrolled, you will find that the proliferation of bacteria in your mouth increases. So you literally improve your diabetes by brushing your teeth and ensuring the cleanliness of your gums. You reduce the effects, amongst the many causes of heart disease, you reduce that by reducing the bacterial count. Because when the bacteria begin to get there, it is literally, the gums are like a place like no other around in your body. You literally have direct access to the blood supply. And now you begin to have this bacteria just hanging, cruising, free floating throughout your circulatory system. And they will then begin to latch on to different areas of inflammation within your cardiovascular system. And this can lead to thickening of the arteries, minor clots forming, and increasing the chances and the potential for atherosclerotic plaques, increasing your hypertension, and causing strokes. And this is not even speculation. This is not like, oh, that's a fanciful idea. No, this is 100% accurate. If we look at heart attack victims, if we look at the heart valves, if you examine the bacteria on the heart valves, it is gum disease bacteria on those heart valves. There is an absolute direct correlation and association with it. It is literally as serious as a heart attack. This is not in dispute anymore. When I was back in dental school a century ago, we were saying it was being well, last century for sure. Yes. It was being speculated that this may be a cause. No one's speculating this anymore. We know it's an issue. And now the cardiac associations are talking about if you are looking to have good heart health, good cardiovascular health, it starts with a dental checkup and dental cleaning to prevent gum disease.
That
it is a
extraordinary.
huge big deal now.
Extraordinary. So in other words, you're saying gum disease and, for example, some of that plaque buildup
Yep.
Could eventually lead to? Is it that it leads to, or it is a symptom of?
It is an exacerbating stimuli. It
I
is
see.
something that makes things worse. So if you're driving along and you're going to crash into a wall, and I'm the bacteria from the plaque, I'm just mashing gas. I'm just making you go faster. It bites, not that if you have gum disease, you're going to get a heart attack. I'm not saying that. What I am saying, though, it increases the level of inflammation. There are certain proteins that doctors will check for. It's called the CSR, C-reactive protein. It's one of the blood tests you do when you're looking for various forms of inflammation during illness or immediately after a heart attack. Did you have a heart attack? Did you have stroke? Do you have angina? Whatever is going on in your body, you look for this inflammatory protein. That inflammatory protein rises with periodontal disease substantially. It is associated with a whole plethora of systemic illnesses throughout the body, and not least of which is heart disease. And now the treatment of heart disease is literally hand in hand with treating gum disease. And one of the most recent findings, literally a couple of years ago, single figures, I think 3-4 years ago, the Alzheimer's. There are specific plaque proteins that are formed on the brain. Well, guess what they're full of? Of these plaque proteins in your brain. Gum disease bacteria. Trust me, brush your teeth.
So literally, the mouth, your oral health, can play a significant role in your internal health, in terms
Massively.
of so much
Massively.
in terms of what's happening in your system.
Massively. And this is one
Absolutely extraordinary.
hugely. I mean, and this is one of the big things is that, remember I was telling you about that blunt instrument that you put around the tooth and you look for and you see how much bone you've lost. Now that area, when you've lost the bone, what happens is that the bone shrinks away from here. And so this area here, the lining of this gum part here, right, it gets inflamed. Now imagine a tooth which has a whole collar of inflammation. So let's say I've got a polo neck shirt here, right? And all of this area around here, because you've managed to put that probe in now, 4, 5, 6 millimeters. And it's a band of 4, 5, 6 millimeters around my whole neck. Now each tooth will have a square centimeter. Now you will have typically 28 teeth. If you or I have chronic adult periodontitis, we will have 28 square centimeters of an infection in our mouth. That will represent an infection the size of the palm of your hand as pus and inflammation. There is not a single doctor that has been on this program, and certainly not any surgeon, that would touch you in surgery if you had an infection this size that's weeping with pus and bleeding to touch. That is an absolute contraindication to surgery. Obviously, if you have an accident, you have an emergency, you need to do what you need to do. But no doctor, no surgeon, we certainly don't do dental surgery. I do a lot of oral surgery. I certainly don't do that in an infected mouth. You will exacerbate, you will make things worse. These days, you do not have knees and hips replaced. Those of you that are sitting waiting there for knees and hips being replaced, you will require a dental checkup and a clean bill of health from your dentist to show that you have healthy gums that are not bleeding on probing, that do not have this full palm-size area of infection. Why? Because when you put your hip joints in and you put your knee joints in, you're putting those hip and knee joints into blood-soaked and blistering with bacteria from your gums. It makes no sense. No doctor would touch you with that.
That's extraordinary. As our audience, pun intended, digests that information. I just had to say these puns.
That's a dad joke.
I tell you, right? So let's go on to a few other issues, and we're going to come back to that, I'm pretty sure, in the questions. So if you have questions related to that, we're going to get to the phone calls and the social media shortly. Doc, let's go on to the cosmetic side of things.
Sure.
In fact, before we go into that, slide 10 shows us, we touched on, for example, implants already, but slide 10 talks about partial denture.
Okay. This is the most common way to replace missing teeth. Now, this, of course, is because you've lost a part of some of the tools from your tool chest, right? Because for whatever reason, things didn't work out. Now we want to replace these missing teeth. Yes, we talked about the implants, etc., but this is the most common form. George Washington was said to have a set of ivory teeth, or I think it was made from hippopotamus bone or something like that. And so dentures were always have been around for hundreds of years in one form or another. Now, basically, it is to replace the form and the function of the teeth to restore the facial profile into position. Because what you will notice if you look at yourself in the mirror and you bite your teeth together, and your teeth in your mouth keep your nose and your chin to a certain height. If you lost your teeth, you'd lose approximately 2 centimeters, and your nose and your chin would come closer by 2 centimeters. And so that's the lower face height would be reduced. That's not pretty, it's not functional, it's not aesthetic, it impairs your speech, it impairs your ability to function, it impairs your ability to do anything. And of course, it will have enormous social pressures upon you, apart from just those functional issues. And so the ability to restore teeth in one form or another has been the remit of dentists for several hundred years. And dentures work, and dentures is a very, very common way of doing it. But of course, the more teeth that are missing, the fewer teeth that the dentures can anchor to. So every tooth surrounding a denture is like tossing an anchor off a boat. If I've got a boat, I toss an anchor off the bow, I toss an anchor off the stern, and I can put one on the port side and one on the starboard. Well, I've got 4 anchors locking me in place. That's a great denture. That person will be happy. They can eat pretty much anything. I can put little clips and clasps in order to secure, and I'm in great shape. I can eat almost anything. But now, if I've only got a bow anchor, well, the back of it's kind of swinging. And that becomes a problem when you've got more back teeth missing, because the back begins to swing. Right. And that's where the use of an implant or of mini implants can come into play.
Or, as our next slide will show, slide 11, full denture.
Indeed. Well, a full denture, that is when you have unfortunately lost all of your teeth. Well, all is not lost. We can try to replace. And so now, what happened to that analogy of that boat out at sea? Where are anchors? We have no anchors. And so we've got to come up with another ingenious way of making these dentures stay in place. And the way the dentures stay in place is by literally forming those dentures up against the gums. And probably 50% of your viewers have had or have something like this in place, and we want to have those borders molded such that you can get this sort of suction effect of the denture staying in place. Much harder to have a lower denture in place and secure, simply because the lower denture is like a horseshoe shape. The upper denture is like a small plate covering the entire palate. It's got a much bigger surface area to adhere to. And this is where many people will get denture fixative pastes and glues. It's this pink or white paste that you put on the surface of the denture, and it's like toothpaste texture, and you can press it into place, and it will help hold the dentures in place. And many elderly people have this sort of thing, and also some not so elderly. But I will tell you this, and I hear this so often when people sort of half joke to me. So, Doc, all my teeth are troubling me. Just take them all out and give me some dentures. Dentures have 10% of the efficiency of your original toolkit. The efficiency, I mean, so if you can eat literally 10 times better with teeth than you can with dentures.
Extraordinary. Doc, let's go on to the aesthetic side of things now.
Right.
So that was the prosthodontic side of things, so your dentures and so on. But wanting the better smile, wanting the best possible smile, let's talk about that now, Doc. So let's rifle through these quickly. So slide 14, I mean, that's an extraordinarily beautiful smile, by the way, and slide 13. Slide 14 talks about braces. What do we need to know about braces?
Okay, so when we talk about aesthetics, we're talking about the interesting thing is about the things that we find beautiful, the things that we find healthy, are also things that are actually physically healthy, right? So when we say, wow, that's an attractive person, whatever you find attractive, the chances are what we find attractive is what is healthy. And if we have teeth that are in proper alignment, that move across each other in a certain way when we bite, when we grind, when we articulate and talk and function, and they move across each other in a certain way, then they act as super efficient tools that never get blunt. So if they're in that particular alignment, they're super efficient. That's what we want to do for you. And guess what? When you have that, you have beautifully straight teeth. And surprise, surprise, that happens to be the most healthy thing that you can have. Is to have this overbite, what's called an overbite. And if you think of like a lid on a jar, and you put the lid on top of the jar, that's the upper teeth bites over the lower teeth. And that's what you saw in that beautiful smile in that previous slide there. And in order to achieve that, and in order to get to that level, if you've been sucking your fingers or pacifiers or whichever, or your breathing is one way or another, and your jaws have not developed, and so when you saw the early slides, when the permanent teeth want to grow and grow down and replace the baby teeth, there's no space. The jaw has to grow. How does the jaw grow? It's how you're functioning, how you're eating, how you're breathing. If that's not being done properly, if you're not exercising, if you're not having an active, functional, and nutrition-filled life, the development is inadequate. So the teeth that want to grow into that beautiful smile that you saw there, and we'll maybe see again. And there you go. And this is perfect development, is that the upper jaw has grown, and it's called the maxilla, has grown to accommodate those gorgeous teeth. And so when they come into place, they bite like a lid over a jar, and they come into perfect form, perfect function, and of course what we consider perfect aesthetics.
So the braces accomplish that,
and
give you an opportunity for there to be that overbite.
And the interesting thing is that braces don't just straighten teeth, braces expand the jaws. We actually grow the bone of the jaws by attaching these brackets onto the teeth to move the teeth, and as the teeth move, bone remodels and forms out ahead of it and expands the jaw. And that's the purpose of it, and it's to create the space that did not form in the first place.
Extraordinary. Bleaching, Doc. So bleaching can be a bad word, but in this context, it's a good word.
Well, bleaching is...
Teeth bleaching we're talking about.
Yes, I mean, enamel, everyone's enamel is the same color. It's basically pure crystal, translucent, glass-like, quartz-like color. What changes one person's tooth color to another tooth color is the dentine that is underneath, and the dentine is the root portion of the tooth. Not the implant here. Is the root portion of the tooth right here, is the yellowy part, right? And that dentine is most like bone. Now, some people have it slightly darker, some people have it slightly lighter. And also, if the enamel is very, very translucent, if it's very healthy, very highly mineralized, it becomes more glass-like, and so the color of the dentine shines through better. And so that means a natural-looking smile is, in fact, yellowy teeth. Now, people don't like that so much these days, right?
White
but you see, that's a
pearlish
fashion.
white.
Yeah, you see, that's a fashion statement, though. That it has no functional value in terms of color, but that's something that we want now, right? I mean, it's like jewelry. It doesn't have a functional value. It's something that you choose. It's a cultural thing. It's a personal thing, and you
for
do
aesthetics.
Of course.
Just for aesthetics.
And aesthetics change from one culture and one group to another, and that's up to you. But to show bright white, undamaged, unmarked teeth. Yeah, that's considered beautiful. And one of the ways that we can do that is just by literally taking a mold of your teeth, making a little plastic sleeve that fits over. In this case, as you see in slide 15 here, this young lady is having this light shone onto her teeth. We've prepared her teeth and gums. We've isolated her gums completely. We don't allow this bleach substance to go onto her gums, otherwise it will burn her gums. Right? And so we have to literally isolate the gums, and it takes a good half hour or so to set this up. And then we activate the bleach, and we activate it with this light, and over a course of about 3 or 4 treatments of about 10 to 15 minutes apiece, within an hour, her teeth will go several shades lighter. And then that is then supplemented by creating this plastic sleeve that we put over the teeth, rather like wearing a glove, except inside the glove you put a special gel. And that gel is a low-dose concentration of a bleach, and you can wear this sleeve overnight, and literally the next day you will see your teeth go lighter. And that in itself works very well. But you do the combination of the in-house bleaching, as we call it, with the light and the isolation and the very high concentration, as well as doing bleaching every night for maybe 4, 5, 6 nights. Your teeth are going to dazzle. We wouldn't need lights in here.
They light up the room. Doc, let's talk about slide 16, which is veneers. We're going to get to the phone call shortly, so have your questions.
Okay, so what veneers are, it's the exact same concept as many ladies will know, that if you want to enhance the appearance of your fingernails, you will do a couple of things. You will push the cuticle back on your nails to expose more of the nail on your hands. And if you're getting a manicure, this applies to guys too. If they get a manicure, they'll push the skin back to enhance the look of the nail, and then you can put the acrylic extensions on. Or if your teeth have been damaged and you've got some old fillings, or if they've been worn because the alignment is not perfect and that toolbox has taken its wear and tear, and you now want to restore it to its original function, then we can create what's called a facade. And we put this facade over the surface of the tooth. The next slide, yes, the slide right there. And on the right, that shows very clearly how, both those teeth have veneers. One is in place and one is being put into place. Right. And so the outer part of the tooth has to be trimmed very conservatively. It's just reduced a little bit. And then we put this facade, and that enhances the teeth. And if you look at to the left of that slide, above and below, it's not
That's
that
before
above,
and after.
Yeah, it's not that above is so terrible. She looked perfectly okay, but she wanted them to be enhanced. And so we did the surface preparation of the teeth, and we manufactured these facades made out of glass ceramic and bonded them on. And look how youthful and how beautiful it looks and how natural it looks. That's the technology we have today. It's just stunning.
And that's available here. You do it.
Doing it for 20
every
years.
Day. All right, Doc, let's go to slide 17, which is Botox. We're going to talk about Botox.
Okay.
It's interesting.
So now, what's this got to do with teeth? Well, if you spend most of your time, as I do, enhancing people's smiles and enhancing their facial, and their ability to laugh and smile, a very, very common thing that is being done today is the use of Botox. Now, Botox is a completely harmless chemical. Basically, it is of a dead bacteria, which has an effect that it causes a bit of muscle paralysis. Now, it's hard to make that sound nice, but it causes softening of muscles. Now, there are two things that we, as dentists, use them for. Now, if you look at my forehead here, I'm raising my eyebrows, I'm having these wrinkles. Now, I'm perfectly cool about wrinkles, and if I do this, you're going to see these creases over here and around my face. Now, and if I'm completely relaxed, there's nothing. Now, if I have a very expressive face, and if I have a lot of different facial, and people are laughing and smiling and happy people all the time, they form these wrinkles. Now, over a period of time, the wrinkles become permanent, in that I can have a completely relaxed face and some of the wrinkles still remain. Now, before that happens, the whole point of Botox is that you soften the muscles. Again, the pure functional value of these wrinkles is, well, questionable. It's limited. Do we have to show all these wrinkles? Do we have to have it? Would you prefer to have a nice smooth face? Well, that's your choice. Personally, I think some wrinkles are good. I like
I have no problem with them either.
Yes, yes, and I think going the other extreme of having a completely flat China doll kind of face, I don't necessarily like that look. But dentists have gotten into this in a big way, because the way that we administer this treatment is we put tiny, tiny little injections into the muscles, very specific muscles around the face. We know how to work, we know which muscles do what around the face. This is our turf. That's what we've been working with our whole lives. And as far as injections, administering injections, I don't think there has been a day a working day of my life where I have not delivered at least 15 to 20 injections in a day. So dentists, there's nobody. You can be a heart surgeon. You can be anything you want in any hospital facility, even an anesthesiologist. You are not doing more injections than a dentist. So you will find that a lot of dentists do get into this and are very comfortable with delivering this thing. Now, apart from the aesthetics, that's not the primary reason I got into it. That was a demand that came along. I said, oh, I've done all these beautiful things on my teeth. Can you do something about these lines? Well, yeah, it's easy. Now, but the other major part of it is that there is a function, there's a habit that we have a tendency to do from sort of your late 40s, 50s upwards, my age upwards, and I am doing this a lot, is that I grind my teeth. What for? For nothing. It's got nothing to do with eating. I just do it. It's part of life, it's part of stress, it's part of... Many people do it.
Or probably they're thinking so hard.
Well, that's right. That's right. So 60% of people will show certain signs of facets, and that's how we managed to pick the title of this. We create these wear facets by grinding. Now, grinding your teeth has no purpose. Grinding your teeth has no value to you. You do not need to grind your teeth when you eat. But the point is we grind our teeth and we wear down the surface of the teeth. Now, if these muscles here on the side of my face are the muscles that are causing that grinding, if I use the same Botox and soften those muscles, I will stop the grinding.
Oh.
And I will stop the pain that you have in the morning. And those people, about 25% of your listeners, know exactly what I'm talking about because they experienced it this morning and they'll experience it tomorrow morning as well if they are not grinding their teeth while doing this now and are suddenly drawn attention to it. And previously we would make bite guards. It's like putting a horse's bit in your mouth, which is not so pleasant. It's so much easier just to soften the strength of that muscle, and it will reduce. If you're biting hard, what on earth do you ever need to bite that hard for? Nothing.
Sometimes
but
they
you
don't
do it
even
out of
realize
nervous energy and tension.
Yes, and they do it subconsciously sometimes. So you're saying in addition to the aesthetic value, there's a utilitarian value to it as well.
Because it
reduces the grinding.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, Doc, well, actually we'll take a very short break, almost a mini break. And then when we come out, we'll get your calls in and our social media interactions as well. So Facebook, your questions, your comments there, as well as our telephone line, which is 462-2996, 462-2996, right after we take a very short break. Stick around here. Get your teeth into house calls next.
Life moves fast. Be prepared with Sagicor. Learn more at sagicor.com.
Join us on Antigua Barbuda today as we take an annual Easter Monday walk with St. Stephen's Anglican Church. Then we head over to Otter's Comprehensive School, as well as have consumer questions with Mrs. Joanne Peters. Antigua Barbuda today. It's all here.
Welcome back. You're in tune with House Calls. Now is your time to call. So you've heard the extensive explanation from Dr. Sengupta. I mean, we could talk about this for the entire night. So we'll be able to get your calls now, your questions, your comments, 462-2996. 462-2996. We'll be able to get your comments as well. Facebook, will you also be able to get your questions there? If you're not able to, call us in, you'll be able to get your question or Facebook as well. Let's go to our first caller this evening. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us on House Calls. Go ahead, please. Hello, good evening. We'll ask you to turn down your television.
Hello, good evening. Is that me?
Yes, you're on. We'll ask you
to
turn...
yes.
Right, we'll ask you to turn down your television, though.
Yes, good night. Wonderful program, as usual. Dr. Sengupta, good night.
Good night, ma'am.
I just want to ask how helpful or dangerous it is to rinse with hydrogen peroxide. 3%.
You don't need to use hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide is what we call a chelating agent. It breaks down protein. Hydrogen peroxide, you purchase it in 5%, and you purchase it as a 5% solution, and if you dilute it, it becomes 0.5%. You can dilute it 1 to 10. That is fine to rinse your mouth with. But the main purpose of hydrogen peroxide is to clean wounds, right? So if you've had a surgery, if you've had a fall, a cut, a scratch, or a graze, or you scraped up your knee, and you want to clean the wound, hydrogen peroxide diluted from what you buy it. If you buy it in the little bottle, it's 5%. You put that on your wound, it's going to fizz. It's going to cook you, right? So dilute that, at least 1 to 5, 1 to 10, and it's a very good agent to clean. It's not really doing any value to your teeth or your gums per se. It's not going to harm you much if you do a 1 to 10 dilution, but you don't have a wound. I mean, unless you've been advised and you've gone through a procedure where this has been recommended.
All right, Doc, let's take another call here. Good evening, thank you so much for joining us on House. Hello, good evening, thank you so much for joining us on House Calls. Go ahead, please.
Good night.
Good night.
And diabetes mixed up with kidney stone.
Diabetes mixed up with kidney stone. I think that's what you said. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Is that what you said? As in diabetes and kidney stones? All right. I'm not.
Yeah.
Okay, caller, we'll get back to you. For some reason, we're not hearing you very clearly. We'll get back to you. But I think that diabetes and kidney stones, I mean, we'll have to deal with that another time because, that's not your specialty.
Kidney stones, no. Diabetes deal with it every day, but kidney stones, no, I can't.
Yes,
I don't want to answer that one.
All right. We'll take some more calls a bit as well. So if the caller can call us back and try to say it a little clearer. All right, so Chris Stevens is asking, when one develops a toothache, which part of the tooth can cause severe pain, and what is the best remedy can be used to quell the ache until one sees the dentist?
All right. So here's the decay, and this is the decay that has developed, and at one point, either through a break or a recurring decay, it gets into the nerve. So it's this inside part that causes the pain, right? And so if you wait until you literally get an ache, a throbbing, dull ache, especially one that wakes you up at night, especially one that when you touch it, it doesn't just nudge, it aches and it stays with you for prolonged pain, that is usually because of a nerve damage right here, okay? And so it's much better to be checked out before that because when you get to that stage, you're either going to have to do a complicated and expensive procedure to clean out the nerve, or you're going to end up having to possibly lose the tooth, which we want to try to avoid. And so the question is, what can home remedy until you can get to see the dentist? All I can recommend for you really is to take a painkiller. Now, I'm sure you've all heard of cloves and the use of that. And the thing is that cloves have a particular oil within them that has what we call an obtundant effect. It's an anti-inflammatory. It suppresses the pain of inflammation. And so that can also work. Don't put an aspirin by the side of the tooth. That's an old housewife's tale. That can cause an aspirin burn. I don't recommend that. But basically, it's a painkiller. Even better is come to see your dentist before this happens.
Precisely.
Oh, that looks familiar.
Yes. By the way, you're looking now at, by the way, we're still getting your calls, 4622996, 4622996. We'll take a call while we're looking at some of those pictures, and for the first time, never before seen images on television, that is, of Dr. Sengupta's state-of-the-art facilities on Airport Road. So look there at some of his dental surgeries. All right, let's go back to the telephone lines. In the meantime, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us on House Calls. Go ahead, please.
Hello, good night.
Good night. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Great.
God bless you.
Great.
Good night, Dr. Sengupta. Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, good night.
Good night.
Okay, I have a daughter, right? When she born and when her teeth growing and they start to fall out. There's one at the front where that one's supposed to be fall out. It didn't fall out. It decay. So the other one them would grow now. When it grow, because of the one at the front would decay. It didn't drop out until long after. So when it drop out now, the teeth is twist. it's supposed to be straight, but it turned crossway like, and it keep rubbing her teeth, rubbing her gum, her tongue. So what can I do to that? Because every day she said to me that, Mommy, I want the braces, I want the braces. So what can I do to help her with that? Because it look a kind of way. So I don't know if you could help me in that one, because she definitely wants braces for it. So I don't know if you can tell me if she really need the braces for that one.
Okay, caller, Dr. Sengupta just wanted to hear a little bit more about what is the cause of the problem. He wasn't quite clear in terms of what caused the problem. You said,
let's repeat
first, please.
Okay, let me start over. Sorry about that. When she was growing, her infant teeth falling out. And then one at the front, it never fall out. It decayed, just stay there, stubborn, not growing, not falling out. And then the other teeth, them keep growing. And when they're growing now, that one keep pushing out, the whole one. So when it keep pushing out, now when the new one grow, it twists across way. It's supposed to be straight, but it don't straight. It twists crosses. So it keep rubbing her tongue.
Okay.
You understand?
Right. Yeah.
So she always keep on saying to me, Mommy, my teeth don't look good. I want braces. So what I call if you ask, if she really need a braces, then I could take her to you, let you see it, and whatever you can do for her for me, because it really look a kind of way, funny. Right. Because I said maybe when she grow, look older, because she's 14, maybe he's gonna, look funny in her mouth, because it really look a kind of way. You have to see it, thing. Right. Tell me about it. So if you can help me about that, fine. I will bring her to you.
So kids go through a transition phase when they begin to lose their baby teeth, and permanent teeth grow behind the baby teeth, and permanent teeth push the baby teeth out. And as that pushing happens, it's kind of like if you dug in underground and pushed a tree up through the ground. The tree itself is going to swing one way or swing the other way. It's going to look kind of ugly. It's not going to look right. Don't worry about that. And don't worry about the location and the angle that the new tooth is coming through. Everything is going to take a little bit of time. And as that baby tooth then is pushed out of the way and the permanent tooth begins to come through, yes, we can have a look at it, but that's not necessarily the right time to have braces. It's definitely the right time to have a conversation and see and see what we can do, and we can discuss possibilities in the future. And most importantly, that transition phase is going to require a good x-ray of all of the teeth to see what positions we're in. Because sometimes we may want to intervene early, and there's different things that we could do to encourage the jaws to grow more in a certain way to ensure that there's enough space for the permanent teeth. You see, an x-ray, well, this is one form of an x-ray. We can see exactly where all of the teeth are. The picture you're seeing on the video there, that's with all the permanent teeth in place. Now, but if we see that at the mixed dentition phase, around about the age of 8, 9, 10, 11, that's where we will see baby teeth being lost. I hope that answers your question. I think.
But does she need braces, though?
Well, she needs. Well, the need for braces is determined by going through an assessment as with regard to the shape of the child's face, the way the teeth are biting. Remember, we ultimately want to have a toolbox, a set of tools which fit together perfectly. We want the nice lid over the jar, nice, even, straight teeth. We all know what looks good. And guess what? What looks good is also healthy in this case. We can all look at a beautiful smile and say, well, we know that looks fabulous. Well, it also happens to be healthy. And so the need for braces there's a series of things that we have to make measurements of, make sure that all the teeth are present. Sometimes you have missing teeth, sometimes teeth are damaged. We don't want to be putting on braces when we should be doing fillings first, or if the gums are bleeding, or if the gums aren't healthy, then, I mean, in the same way, you're not going to put fancy wheels on a car if your carburetor's not, if your car doesn't start. I mean, the basics need to be right first. So before you start thinking about braces, get a basic dental checkup. Every dentist can do that for you. And it's going to involve some x-rays. And depending on the age of the child and the stage of development.
14.
14 is all permanent teeth. And at 14, you're going to potentially have other issues going on, such as wisdom teeth are going to be pushing through. The location of her wisdom teeth are going to be very important for her there, because the wisdom teeth, they tend to, well, they begin to develop around about 14, and they begin to start pushing through in 17, 18, 19. But we want to see the location of those teeth, because there very often is not enough space for them to come through. But yeah, 14 is a great, I mean, yes, if she hasn't been to a dentist before, she must go.
All right, so Doc is asking you to take her to the dentist, and an assessment will be made. All right, thanks, caller, really appreciate it. Sherry Samuel, Doc, asks, suppose the metal tip breaks off in the tooth during a root canal and the dentist fills the tooth with a metal piece still in there, will it become infected and cause problems in the gums?
Not necessarily. Okay, so the question here is when a particular treatment is being done, and if, for example, the cavity has gone so deep into the tooth and we're putting instruments down into here to clean it out. We've got these terribly fine canals. Well, there's always 3, sometimes there's 4 of them in a back tooth. And these extremely fine tips are being used. Sometimes if a fragment of that file embeds within the tooth, depending on what stage you are at in the process of the root canal, it may or it may not cause a problem. It's a relatively common occurrence. It is not necessarily a catastrophic problem, but it very much depends on when it happened. If, for example, you're cleaning out an infected tooth right from the very beginning and there's a fragment of the metal file that breaks, well, now we have a problem because we can't clean it out properly. We've just only started. And so there are different techniques that can be used. Some people can be very good at getting those broken file tips out. Unfortunately, it is one of those things that can happen. And, you know, you just, there are different dentists. I mean, the process of doing root canals is called endodontics. And it is a specialty all by itself. And some doctors are very, very good and very, very experienced at that. Yeah, but don't think that it necessarily condemns the tooth completely. It definitely is not the case.
But what about infections, though?
Infections, well, if the tooth has already been cleaned of the infections, if the canals have already been shaped, and the insides have already been sterilized, if you're at that phase of the root canal, no, you shouldn't get an infection. That doesn't mean you get an infection at all. If it's at the very beginning, yes, you could. Then it could mean that you may have to lose the tooth after all. But remember, the need for the root canal in the first place, you're sort of at the last-ditch attempt to try to save the tooth. The tooth has already been so damaged such that we have to go and basically gut it, if you like, and leave the shell behind and close that up. So it was already quite an advanced problem that you had. But no, it's hard to answer that question not knowing at what stage of the complex, multifaceted process that you're in.
All right, we're going to get some more calls in, and then, of course, 4622996, that's the number to call. Eileen Thomas, what can you do to fix an underbite?
Okay, so an overbite is this. Upper teeth, remember, lid on the jar, right? So that's an overbite. So how far down? So when I bite my teeth together, my upper teeth bite over that, right? So that's called an overbite. I can be here, here, here. The further down I am, that's a deep overbite, okay? Now, an underbite is when it's the other way around, when the lower teeth bite over like this. Some people are like this permanently, right? Now, what can you do for that? Well, ideally, we catch this problem early. And if we can catch you in the developmental stage, and the most important time, remember I was talking about how we need the jaws to grow with breathing and function and correct habits and eating, etc. If we catch you in that phase whilst your jaws are growing, we can put certain appliances in place which can gently squeeze those jaws apart and allow the space, sufficient space for the permanent teeth to be able to grow through. Now, if we catch the underbite in the early phases, that's where we can do something about it. The earlier, the better. Right? I literally had a case the other day, 7-year-old boy, permanent teeth, 8-year-old boy, it's permanent teeth, top and bottom, only like this. Now, it's a simple question of putting an appliance in place that he wears every night, and it just pushes the upper teeth forward, and we go from here, and we can just jump right over that, and we can correct it. If it is somebody my age or as an adult, it's a lot more difficult. And that I could talk about all night. That's a very big topic, and it really depends on a whole host of factors. But the key thing about an underbite, it can be fixed, but catch these things early. I can't stress to you how big a deal it is to bring people into the dentist early. A really, really important time.
Don't be afraid.
Yeah, definitely don't be afraid. When your kid has teeth, they need a dentist, period. Right?
Simple as that.
And the main thing that happens when you go to see your dentist with your little child who has beginning to have teeth, even if not all of them, is to educate you, the parent, not the child, because that you have to do. We're going to educate you and guide you as to the specifics of what's going on. We're not necessarily going to do anything. And if you're coming early before the kid has problems, that's preventative dentistry. It's the cheapest and the best dentistry you can do. Come when you don't have problems.
That's a good one. Let's go back to the telephone lines. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us on House Calls. Go ahead, please.
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
Good evening.
Fine, thank you.
Great.
I just called to congratulate Dr. Sengupta on his good work. I was his first patient in 1993.
Oh, I know who this
and I'm
is.
still his patient. He's a wonderful dentist. He's the best in Antigua. Congratulations.
I have the best patients for sure, and you are by far and away one of the best ones. Thank you, Ms. Shaya.
There you go. And so say all of us, actually. I did say that at the top of the program.
You're welcome, Dr. Sengupta. Bye-bye.
Okay, take very good care. All right, 4622996. We'll take a few more calls. Doc, gum disease.
Yes.
50% of adults have gum disease.
Yes.
Extraordinary.
Yes, it is. It's and you've seen the associations with gum disease, and the effects of what we call systemic. Systemic is whole body. So you have a problem here, and here affects the whole body, and so therefore that's called a systemic effect. And so a simple little infection going on in your mouth, what you think is a simple little infection, and remember that what I was saying, if you get this pocketing of infection around the tooth. Each tooth has a square centimeter. If you've got 28 teeth with infections around 28 teeth, you've got an infection this size of pus. You would be shocked if you saw that on your arm or your leg, and no doctor would be doing any surgery. And this is such a big deal, and it is becoming much more to the forefront of medicine and dentistry on a daily basis, is that you don't operate in when you are in an infected state or in a highly inflamed state.
All right, Doc, we have about another 6 or so minutes left in the program. We're getting as many calls. We're going to call this the lightning round. Getting as many calls in, as many Facebook questions and comments. Let's take our first caller here. Okay, we still have to talk about sensitivity issues as well.
All right.
And there's some tips, some crucial tips for our audience, right, to wrap up. Okay. Good evening, caller. Thank you so much for joining us on House Calls. Go ahead, please. Good evening, caller. Go ahead, please. Caller, good evening.
Hello?
Yes, you're on. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, hello?
Yes, we're hearing you. Go ahead, please.
Hi, I'm asking a question. Yeah, how is, why is in the mouth? Because we're dealing with the mouth, right?
You're listening to
yes.
you're listening.
It's also in the lips,
right,
the
you're
bottom
listening.
lip, or...
Caller, could I ask you to just turn down your television? You're listening to the television.
Or pimples. What does it have to do with gum disease?
What was the question, sorry?
Sorry, could you restate the question? What does one have to do with gum disease? All right, caller, I think what's happening is that...
Pimples and rashes and ulcers in the lips.
So, rashes in the mouth, that's what you're asking? Oh.
I could talk a little bit about gum disease.
Yes, if it has to do with gum disease.
Okay, gum disease, whether rashes have anything to do with gum disease.
Okay.
I think that's the question.
Okay.
Thanks, caller, I really appreciate it.
So a rash is an inflammation. A rash, you can get it from plant stings, insect stings, that effectively forms a rash. A rash and inflammation is pretty much the same thing. If I scratch myself, it's been caused by my nails scratching me, or a branch scratching me, or an insect biting me. So that causes inflammation. And so the caller is indeed onto something, that gum disease is basically another way of getting that inflammation, but being caused by the bacteria that grow in your mouth. And when you get that inflammation, that is the beginning of that process. And that is when the bacteria begin to go in there, the blood vessels begin to expand, all of the cells begin to try to attack the bacteria. You get this inflammation going on, you get this civil war going on within, inside your body, and that's where the bacteria begin potentially to get inside of you in your bloodstream. If you haven't brushed your teeth for the last 1 week, and I take a blood test of you, I can look at your blood results and I can tell you that your mouth is not clean. That is how obvious it becomes.
Wow.
There is no doctor in any specialty that will ever tell you that that's okay. It's not okay. You cannot have that going on. And it's so simple to fix.
All right, Doc, I think we might have another caller on. May or may not be the caller earlier. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us on House Calls. Go ahead, please.
Good night.
Yes, go ahead, please.
My grandma told me to ask, like, when you're eating and sometimes your teeth burn, is that cause of teeth rotting?
When you're eating?
When you're eating and your teeth burn?
When they're sensitive, like with cold drinks and ice cream. Yes, is that what you mean?
Do you mean, Doc is asking if you mean like your teeth are sensitive, you have sensitivity issues when you're eating certain foods?
Okay, so remember what we're saying about gum disease, right? And what we're saying about cavities? That's the two problems you can have. When you begin to have a cavity that breaks down like this in the side of the tooth, that inside part, outside this nice, hard, shiny bit in the outside that is the yellow part and the nerve inside, right? That's called the pulp. This is called the dentine. That's the enamel. When you begin to get a decay going into the tooth like this, that can get sensitive. Anything hot or cold can it's like if you have a winter coat on and you open your scarf and something goes in, or if you have a wetsuit and water gets in. It's just it's an area where there's a temperature change and you're aware of it. In the same way, you can get that with a cavity. Now, another way of getting it is if you're not brushing your teeth properly and the gums are shrinking away, then also you can expose that same yellow portion of the dentine right there, and that yellow portion then is also sensitive. It doesn't have a cavity, but this is what happens when when your gums shrink back because we haven't managed to keep a good enough check on that with regular brushing, etc. And over the years, then you get what's called long in the tooth. It looks like your gums are shrinking and it looks like your teeth are getting long. Your teeth are not getting longer. Your teeth are the same length they've always been. Your gums are shrinking, makes your teeth look longer. And that will also cause sensitivity. And so if you have a cold drink or if you have air on it or an ice cream or something like that, that part of the tooth will be sensitive. And people describe that as nedging a lot. Right?
Yes, nudging. I remember that term. All right, we're going to take two more calls because this one is online now. We'll take one more after this caller. Good evening, caller. Please turn down your television set or your radio and go ahead, please. You're on. Hello, caller. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead,
Good
please.
evening.
My son's teeth at the front, especially on the bottom set, they actually are pouching out, like they're coming forward and like twisting all of about four or six of them. He's about 26, 27 now, and they're just coming out, like just coming forward and like crossing over each other.
That's very, very common, okay? Now, first of all, the lower front teeth, these are called the lower incisors. That's these guys down here, right? Mm-hmm. These teeth here are in 60% of all humans all over the world, you have crowding over here. Is because they're very, very small teeth. Their contact points are very small. And your tongue is right there. It's a very powerful muscle. And so the activity of your tongue over a period of time can push those teeth and cause them to crowd, amongst other things. And also depends on the development and the growth of the jaws. In addition to that, at 26, it may also be possible that if he is not keeping his teeth clean Remember how the bone and the gum shrinks away from around the tooth? That means the tooth has got less support. If the tooth has less support, then the action of the tongue is now moving a tooth easier because there's less support and the tooth will twist. And so now, and the tooth will come forward and it will twist. And so it could be periodontal disease. It could be because his jaws are too small. We could also put him into braces and straighten things out. It could be a number of factors. We'd really have to have a close look at that with an X-ray and to
In
see.
an instant like that, can they be straightened?
Sure.
He has to.
Yes.
Would he be?
Yes.
Would he have to wear braces or things like that?
Maybe. It's very hard to diagnose something like that on a conversation. But there's definitely several solutions that could be used to rectify that problem. I mean, there's various ways. And it also depends on how he feels about it. It sounds like it might bother you more than him. And
all right, so caller, I think that you should
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Really appreciate it. I think you should take your son to see Dr. Sengupta. That's a good opportunity. He won't say it himself, but I'm saying it for him. All right, we'll take one more caller, 462-2996, 462-2996, and then wrap our program this evening, just before we take another call, Doc. And by the way, we can show a little bit more images of your state-of-the-art facilities on Airport Road. We actually were there yesterday. Our last call is coming in now. So this is... you know, I mean, cutting-edge stuff in terms of what you're able to do, the technologies that you're able to have now. I mean, significantly different from 1993 when the caller said, you know, she was one of your first patients. That has changed significantly, hasn't it?
It has for sure. It's changed very dramatically. This is actually one of the very small surgeries. But anyway, what was the question there?
We'll talk about that. We'll talk about Charlotte. We're just talk about that until we get our next caller in, our last caller, who is coming in right now as we speak. Good evening, caller. Thank you so much for joining us on House Calls as we continue to look at some of the facilities.
Good evening.
Good evening, ma'am. How are you?
Okay, I'm very well, thank you. Dr. Sengupta, is it harmful for one to use baking soda cleaning their teeth? I'll listen off air. Thank you so kindly.
Baking soda to clean your teeth.
Did you get my question, sir?
That's a good question. The thing
thank you.
You're most welcome. The thing about baking soda is that baking soda is granular, right? So it's very similar to, I'm sure some of you will remember, smoker's tooth powder was available. You buy a little dish, little pink powder, you put the toothbrush in it and you scrub. You can also, people used to brush their teeth with sand as well. And yes, it will remove debris. The problem is, and it will do the job of cleaning your teeth, the problem is, if you use crystalline structures like that, it also damages your teeth. You can look at the largest rocks, the strongest rocks by a river, the water will damage it by sand going along it. If you look at any seashore, even with water, you will see the little bits of grains of sand, the small pebbles will erode rocks. So for that reason, I do not recommend baking soda. Now, do not confuse that. There's a toothpaste called Arm & Hammer. They say they have baking soda in there. But the baking soda in that toothpaste is not the baking soda that you would buy over the counter. Because the grain size is totally different. If you use regular baking soda, you may as well take sandpaper to your teeth. It may be clean, but they're not going to last long.
Good one. Let's take our last caller. We've been allowed to take one last one. So, good evening, caller. You are our last caller. Go ahead quickly, please.
Hello, good night.
Good night.
Good night.
I have a question. When I eat my teeth at the side, it does not, like cold drinks, the doctor said cold drinks are so sensitive to the teeth. That's not what happened. When I eat, I take a bite of food, it hurts, like there's a hole or something in the teeth. I can't really explain exactly, but it hurts a lot, and it starts for a while and it stops.
I think I'm hearing that you're having pains while you eat, right? And
no, not in my whole, more like a side, maybe one teeth. And when I bite down, it's like a pain that lasts maybe a minute and it stops.
So one of her tooth, there's pain in one of her tooth when she bites down.
Okay, well, if there's pain, if you press on a tooth or if you bite on a tooth, and you get pain caused as a result, it could be that the nerve inside the tooth is damaged. And that infection and inflammation is seeping out the roots of the tips of the teeth. And so when you press on the tooth by biting or by pressing on it, you're squashing into that inflamed area. It's like if you poked yourself with a cassie thorn and I go ahead and poke that same wound, that can potentially hurt you. The other thing that may have happened, if it's happening more when you're eating, but it's not, if you touch and you press the tooth, it feels fine, but when you bite or chew your food and it hurts, it could be that the tooth is cracked, and the cracked halves of the teeth are separating as you're chewing. That's a very common condition called a cracked cusp syndrome. And that's a tricky one to fix. But again, with something like that, where you're having discomfort with any sort of pain and discomfort, we really need to have a very careful look, do a couple of tests that will determine one type of problem for another. You see, pain is pain. All pain is not equal. And the way you get your pain and how long it lasts and what it feels like and what causes it, that's how dentists determine. Just say, Doc, my tooth hurts. There is no one solution to that. And there is no one diagnosis to that. We have to look at that extremely carefully to ensure that we come up with the correct diagnosis such that we can deliver the correct treatment for you.
Okay, so the caller, you should see the dentist. See Dr. Sengupta. Dr. Sengupta, I have like 1 minute left. We're pretty much well over into overtime. Lightning round. Quick answers, Doc. Mouthwashes.
Mouthwashes.
Listerine and the others.
All good. There's one called Peridex or Corsadil. Use that as a medicine. That is done for after you've had extractions or if you've had oral surgery. That's not a regular mouthwash. The Corsadil is very good after procedures or if you have infections in your mouth. Otherwise, Listerine, Scope, all that stuff, all good, not a problem.
Good. Sensodyne toothpaste for sensitivity issues?
All anti-sensitive toothpastes are really good. When the roots of the teeth become exposed, and these roots become exposed on the side, you're impregnating the surface of the tooth. It's like you're putting varnish on wood, like the fluoride application. It's good stuff, it works, and it works well. But brush with it, only use that type of toothpaste every day, and by the end of the week, you will often find that it's better. And the final tip for that is if one particular spot is sensitive, take a bit of that Sensodyne toothpaste the size of a lentil, rub it on your tooth, leave it there, spit, but don't rinse, leave it there overnight, and it will have its effect quicker.
All right, and screening quickly in terms of dentist, every 6 months is fine?
Everybody should be coming every 6 months, yes, basic screening. If you have had a lot of dental treatment, you need to go more frequently. There are many people, those that need me the least come the most. Those people with perfect teeth are there all the time. If they came once a year, it's fine because they have a perfect track record. If you have a mouth full of cavities or fillings or caps or crowns or dentures or things that have been artificially replaced, you need to come more often than the basic 1 to 2 times a year. That's a very important point. If your gums bleed tonight when you brush your teeth, and you better all brush your teeth tonight, but if your gums are bleeding, that is a sign of the first stage of gum disease. That is not okay. Where it bleeds, brush. It's showing you, hello, I'm bleeding, brush over here. Not the opposite of, oh my God, it's bleeding, let me leave it. No, if it bleeds, you brush it.
If it bleeds, brush.
There you go.
I like that. All right, Doc, that is sage advice to wrap up our program well into overtime, but we could do this for the rest of the night. Unfortunately, you have a long day tomorrow, and we're out of time. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. Joining us next week is Dr. Jason Bellizier. We're talking about cancer screening.
Oh, good.
Which could save your life. Dr. Jason Bellizier will be joining us next week on House Calls. Dr. Sengupta, we are in your debt. What a fantastic program. What a fantastic explanation. I love your analogies. I love your demos and your replicas and your pictures. Extraordinarily good.
It's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Dr. Sengupta, wrapping up House Calls for this week. Do hope that you can join us next week. The program is called House Calls, sponsored by Sagicor. Kind compliments of Pink Mongoose and A.G. Morgan. Of course, our executive producer, Erna May Brathwaite, our production assistant, Mary Charles, and the rest of the team here. Another fantastic program. See you next week, same time, same place. Goodbye.